I'm just going to leave it there. But I think you know where I'm going with it, and I can't unsee it now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Blushing Nerd Tarot. This is the first episode of a new series calling Tarot Nerd Out. So this will be episode 1 on the High Priestess. So a couple days ago, I posted a short where I rolled a single die to pick a number in the first portion of the major arcana, and landed on a 2. So we're going to do the High Priestess. And in future times, we're going to repeat that process. We'll roll a new one probably, maybe once a week or so. We'll see. And the idea is to take a deep dive into the symbolism and the artwork and some different aspects of the cards. And, perhaps we'll go through the whole thing, all 78. Perhaps we'll stop with the majors. Not 100% sure yet, but this is an educational experience for me as much as anyone else. Any of the information I'm going to present is coming from other sources other than some opinions and things that I'll inject. But I'll be posting books that I pull the information from. I'll be showing some of the books during the recordings. And in some cases, that'll be information that comes from the books that are included with tarot decks. In other cases, it'll be other resources from my library. So let's dive right in. Take a look at the High Priestess card. Everything that I start with is going to be essentially right out of RWS. That'll be the base of operations for this, but that doesn't mean that's where we're staying. We will be diving into all sorts of different decks as examples and see if we can see some common themes maybe within some of the different decks, as well as taking a look at different systems, Tarot de Marseille, so on and so forth. And we'll see what those depictions look like for comparison's sake. So the High Priestess. A few different interesting things jump out, but this is one of those cards that is sort of shrouded in mystery. In fact, that's part of the divinatory meaning, maybe a keyword there even. So what interests me about this one, and I'm glad this came up first, because I think this is a great one to start with, because there's a lot of things that we'll see in this card that actually we see throughout the tarot. In fact, some people do say that there are only 3 characters in the tarot, and the High Priestess is one of them. So that does lend itself to that theme. Some of the themes we'll see on this card carrying out through the rest of the deck. But let's just take a brief look here and kind of point out. And of course, this is one of those things that we've all seen this card so many times. Do we really need to hash this out again? Well, if you'll indulge me, it's really this is an exercise for me primarily, and I just hope that some others enjoy it and get some benefit out of it. But if we take a look at the different things we see on this, and we just visually start to tear it apart, obviously the pillars are a major component in this card. They're very prominent. And then we have in the background, if you look real close, you'll see indications of a horizon there and some watery features. So just some little hints at some waves, but they're barely even visible. So it does tend to make one think of a calm sea that we'd be looking at if it weren't obstructed by the rest of the card, the rest of the imagery. But on the water theme, we have this beautiful blue gown that sort of turns into waterfalls. And that is significant. Additionally, we have the curtain that is in front of the High Priestess, or I'm sorry, behind the High Priestess, that features pomegranates. That's a pretty important feature as well. We have the crown or headdress, which in this case, you see a couple different interpretations of this. Some say it is the phases of the moon, with waxing crescent, full moon, and waning crescent. Apologize, I don't have the correct lingo coming to me at the moment, um, but this I've seen some writing that says that actually that's not necessarily correct, and of course, as we'll see on all these, I tend to feel like let's think about it the way that speaks to you most, not necessarily the way any one source talks about it, because we can't, we can look at the original White Book, um, and we can look at some of the research to see what was intended for some of these, but also we can't talk to Pixie. Unfortunately, Pamela Coleman Smith, we were not able to say, okay, let us know what's happening here. What did you intend? So what we could also see is basically a pearl. That is one option there. A pearl with the rest, just could be a couple different things going on with that. But I have some thoughts as well that I'll get into a little bit later, as we work through the rest of the card. But so we have, really, not a significant facial expression one way or the other. There's no, so that kind of tells me maybe serenity is the idea there. But there's a little bit of a downturn on the right side, of her mouth, and we could think about different ways to interpret that as well. The cross, this is supposed to be an equal armed cross, I believe, and that could also have some important meaning. That, of course, the Torah. Interesting here too to note that the Torah is facing her, so she's holding this, but also partially obscured. You also can't see her right hand. So this is knowledge that she holds and is meant for her. Is it meant for us, as the readers or the querents? Possibly, but this is an indication of, her possession over that spiritual knowledge. We also have the crescent moon down at the feet, that is being washed over by that gown that's turning into water. So that's one of the reasons why some folks say that, I think that the headdress is not a moon or a lunar depiction, because we already have that down below. So it would be repetitive to have it at the top. But within those, so let's just stop there for a second. I think because we've covered a fair amount of what's going on here, just in terms of pointing things out. Um, so, um, if you just take it at face value, let's say you didn't have a book to reference and you were just approaching this cold, those two pillars with the letters might bring up some questions, because you may want to know, because naturally we tend to, as humans, and we're drawn to language, and we tend to want to know what do those letters signify. But we might just be able to see that, there's a white and a black pillar, and that can simply be interpreted as a balance, of two forces, or just a balance in general, some kind of completeness even. And so we could start there and think about things in those terms. But I have a couple of things I want to look at here. So before we go into um, some, I have some other examples of some High Priestess cards here too. But I think what I'd like to do is show you some things that I've done here to help isolate portions of the image. So hopefully the quality on this will be okay in this interpretation. But right here, I've sort of blurred out all but the curtain, because I feel like that's an extremely important part of this card. Of course, we need to take it all together, but it helps me to kind of separate these out. So if I blurred everything else out, now we look at the curtain on its own, and we see the pomegranates are very prominent, right? So we could take that a step further and just look at the pomegranates. Is the number of pomegranates significant? We have 7 pomegranates. In my mind, that's significant. 7. I don't think anything was done by accident here. 7 is a really important number. And as pomegranates themselves, let's talk about those as a symbol. One of the sources I'm looking at is a book called The Dictionary of Symbols by J.E. Surlett. Um, this is an old book. I don't know what the original. I mean, this I probably bought, maybe in the I don't know, late '90s or so. This was published or this was printed rather in 1995 by Barnes and Noble. However, it was first translated into English in 1971. So getting back there a little ways, but so they have pomegranates in here in this dictionary of symbols. So there's one section in here that just I think is really fascinating, and I love this as a way to help look at the card. It says so the Greeks believed that the pomegranate sprang from the blood of Dionysus. There are similar beliefs linking anemones with Adonis and violets with the Attis and blah 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 blah. So there's a lot of stuff, that isn't significant here, I don't think. But what I do like is this. It says the predominating significance of the pomegranate arising from its shape of the multiple and diverse. I'm sorry, its shape and internal structure rather than from its color is the reconciliation of the multiple and diverse within apparent unity. So, in the Bible, for instance, it appears as a symbol of the oneness of the universe. It is also symbolic of fecundity, so fertility, so on. What I love, though, because I'm very interested, and I've mentioned this in other videos too. I'm very interested in the concept of spectrum, and because and how it relates to the human experience and diversity and so on. But to see this pomegranate as reconciliation of the multiple and diverse within apparent unity. So if you've ever taken a pomegranate, split it in half, and you just see all of those seeds in there, that is the multiple and diverse. That is us. And I think that's where we're going here with this card. That's what I like personally to to view the pomegranates in tarot that way, um, because it draws us into this card and into this experience in a very intimate way. So it is, if it is all of us, right, and it is on this veil, this curtain that is separating the conscious world from the unconscious world. Because again, you've probably read that's sort of the idea behind the sea that is on the other side of the pillars and the curtain. The sea represents the unconscious, and everything in front of the curtain represents the conscious mind. Um, and if we think about that curtain being the especially with the symbolism of the pomegranates being the all of humanity, um, and the diversity of all of that experience throughout history, or as it is presently, and how that is an apparent barrier to flowing with the unconscious mind. But is it a true barrier? Because a curtain is very easy to sweep aside. Um, you could pass through that quite easily. There's really nothing holding you back. So you have to think about how your conscious mind is maybe being held back by your belief that um, that the diversity of human experience is somehow um, a, a barrier. Your experience in the real world is somehow a barrier from your unconscious mind, and what's going on behind the curtain. And I think if we get this card in a reading, um, we can think about how, depending on the type of question, depending on the type of issue we're facing, getting this card in a reading can sort of give you, um, maybe permission to look behind the curtain, to resolve that mystery a little bit. Um, there's a couple of other resources that have some really good insights into this as well. Um, and of course, um, you know, again, we're looking at, well, and okay, we can also look at some different symbols here while we're at it. Um, so, a couple of keywords again: secrets, mystery, the future as yet unrevealed, um, silence, tenacity, wisdom. So, um, let me take a look at the pillars, and this will be from Benabel Wen's wonderful book, The Holistic Tarot. You have to pardon me. I have a stack of books a mile high over here, to make sure that I had all the references I wanted just in case. Um, so let's take a look here. So just reading from the italicized portion here, just sort of our introduction. So the priestess, who wears a blue veil, sits between two pillars, one dark, one light. The letters B and J on the pillars reminiscent of Solomon's temple. The J on the right for Yakin, which means he shall establish, and B on the left for Boaz, for in it is strength. And apologies if I'm not pronouncing correctly. There is a Latin cross fixed on her chest. In her head is adorned with a crown containing three phases of the moon, waxing, full, and waning, representing the maiden, mother, and crone. There we go. That's what I was looking for earlier. So this is one interpretation that is saying, yes, it's the moon. And behind her is a curtain printed with pomegranates. At her feet is waxing crescent moon, waiting in the priestess gown, which seems to have transformed to water. She holds a scroll with the word Torah. Behind the priestess is a body of calm water. So again, if we're so in this case, if we are going to look at that as well, let's just pause there for a second, actually, and because I do want to address the pillars. The pillars to me too are forming a gateway here. Um, so it's, if we find ourselves in a position where we are out of balance, um, the High Priestess card may have the energy to bring us into balance, because it's very, very heavy on that black and white and the balancing forces here. Very heavy on that, and does that, and that may have been the intent behind making those so dominant here. Of course, in reading some of the other resources, it says if the pillars in reality, if the for Solomon's temple would have been absolutely gigantic, and here can only be represented as so big because we're limited in space because of the card. But still, I feel like um, we're taking up a lot of space on this card with that, with those pillars. So do they then force us into a position where, and force might be the wrong word there, but do they really guide us to a balanced place if we meditate on this card? And then that puts us in a proper state of mind for bringing together the subconscious and the conscious by parting that curtain, by interacting in a positive way with that diversity that we find and the pomegranates there, the acknowledging of the veil of human experience and diverse experience. So being at peace with that allows us to delve into the unknown and to solve some of those mysteries. The other thing I'd like to bring up here, that just started jumping out at me as I was starting to fade out those background portions to bring in a certain element into focus in that program where I was working with the cards. I feel like something else started pointing itself out to me that I really hope I'm not the only one that I can't be the only one that has noticed this, but of course the energy here, the pomegranates also having that element of fertility being important. We're also talking about feminine energy here. And here's the blushing nerd part in me, okay? But do we notice anything about the shape if we think anatomically? And if we think about the what would be the tops of these crescent moons on either side of the headdress. So what I'm talking about here is the center portion of this image, right? And so ignore the pillars for a moment. Think about the center portion of the image, just purely from shape. I don't think Pixie did this on accident. But then think about the top portions of those crescents, if they are moons or if, like other people have suggested, it's a pearl between two crests. But those each reach into a pomegranate. And I'm not quite sure how else to say this, but those combined come to basically an element of the reproductive system. So if we take the crest portions, if I could get my camera to behave here, there we go. Those crest portions and the pomegranate combined, and then overall the High Priestess. I'm just going to leave it there. But I think you know where I'm going with it, and I can't unsee it now. So with that, let's talk about some other depictions of the High Priestess. So we have here Tarot of Mystical Moments. We do have the curtain. We have the sea. We have a moon. So we have a lot of the same elements here. In this case, the High Priestess is sort of acting as the person who's in charge of the curtain, maybe a little bit more. They're taking control over that veil, which is an interesting way to look at it. But we do have a dress that's turning into water because the ship is actually going through that water. So that's fun too. We have, here's Morgan Greer. I just got out a few to take a look at here. I don't have a large selection. Didn't pull them all out, but I think there's enough here to kind of capture this. So we have the pillars. We have black and white pillar. We have the crescent moon at the feet. She's holding a scroll. No text on that. She has the cross. In this case, we have a single, possibly crescent moon on the head, on her hat. So, and then we have the curtain with a sea visible barely in the background there. And this is one for Morgan Greer. This is rather pulled back, you know. So a lot of the Morgan Greer images are tight in. This one pulls back a little bit so we can capture more of that, which I appreciate. It's the mini, obviously. interesting image here from the Lux Ex Umbra. And in general, that fits with the rest of the way that deck is presented, in that it doesn't give you a whole lot up front. You have to think about it and how it might relate to the way you read in the symbolism that you appreciate or use in tarot. And the ethereal visions with, of course, that fun gold. But she's holding a book. She has the moon symbol. I love the treatment on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture it here, actually, but it's kind of a star field on the upper portion of her cape that goes around her neck, which I really like that. But she's holding a book. We have the same symbol, but also cut off on those lower portions of the crescent moons, if that's ultimately what they are. We don't really get much in the way of a curtain or a sea depiction in the background, but we do get almost a mirror behind. So would that then have us looking at ourselves for some introspection? From the Pagan Otherworlds, of course. Beautiful. We're lacking in a lot of water in terms of what's back there, maybe, but we do have a gown that is dipping into a pool and perhaps turning into that water. We have the lunar symbols on what may be some sort of charm or even a bookmark coming off of that book. She's holding some flowers. So this is from Cat Black's Golden Tarot. Inclusion of a pet cheetah here, which is fun. Come on there. Doesn't want to focus. So we do have a book. We have the pillars. Struggling with some of the other symbolism here. Not much of a curtain going on, but perhaps even on her dress itself, though I don't know. I'm not really seeing much there. So okay. And then from the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, big moon energy there. We have the cross on the amulet around the bird's neck, feathers, carrying the scroll in its beak. We have some blue flowers down toward the base that kind of lend themselves to that water element. It's a beautiful nighttime scene. Perhaps those leaves are creating that curtain for us. Maybe the void of the black in the back is our subconscious element. Interesting. So just wanted to bring a few of those out. There's a couple of different really cool things that come out there that I think are worth diving into even more. But I do think that what we capture most from this, if we just recap a little bit here, is the balancing we get from the pillars, and the pillars acting as a gateway with that curtain with the pomegranates and the symbolism there. If we accept those. Curtains have an interesting way of sort of melding into you if you walk into them. So if you allow yourself to become one with that diverse experience, then through that, you'll be passing through that curtain and you'll have access to that unconscious world. Maybe that's another way to look at it. The watery energy, the moon energy, and that Torah, that knowledge, that sacred knowledge that she possesses. There was one other little tip that came from contemporary tarot, that the thinking that you may need some time, if this comes up in a reading, that you may need some time alone to learn how to trust your gut. And I like that too, because she possesses that knowledge, but she is calm and at peace with her solitary existence. And that curtain is not an isolation. It is just almost a rite of passage. And if we think about it in terms of allowing yourself to meld with it, which will permit you to pass through it at the same time, but you have to believe in order to do that. Just think it's a wonderful card to start this little journey. So I hope you find it interesting. It's a really fun exercise to at least go through on my own, and to learn a broader variety. That's, again, the pomegranates, the diversity of opinions, all of the different ideas. And it's funny to read some of these books. Some authors really come at it with the almost an aggressive, like, you've heard this version of this story before, but that's laughable. That's not the way. And honestly, it's entertaining. I can't help but giggle if I read an author that's so adamant about their own interpretation of something as diverse as tarot. And that's fine. That we know what suit they would belong to, right? So those authors, they're welcome to that opinion. And I think it's good for all of us to approach that type of writing with an open mind and say, okay, well, they feel very strongly about this, but maybe I'll just add that to my arsenal and my way of thinking of things. And we're welcome to have strong opinions too. Some people will have very much a single path that they sort of meld with one idea of the tarot and the meanings and run with it, and that's perfectly fine. It's good to have a comfort zone, but at the same time, I'm just the type of person that really likes to hear different opinions and have my opinions challenged. So feel free to challenge me. Put something in the comments if you have some thoughts on this card, and we can make this a fun community resource as well. So I'll be rolling the dice pretty soon to get episode 2 going, and we'll see what card comes up then. And like I said, we'll go through the first half of the majors. And part of that was because I couldn't think of a clever way to roll. There are no 22-sided dice that I know of. So right now I'm rolling a 12-sided die. I think it was either a 12 or a 10. Dig it out of my Dungeons and Dragons stash. So I think it's 10. So I'm rolling a 10 first so we can get through, because it has a 0 on it. That's right. I am doing the 10 first. So we'll roll a 10 first until we've gone through the full, up through number 9. And then we'll move from there. So anyway, hope you enjoy, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot, folks.